Commissioner Scott Britton. Today I'm at the Somme Prairie Grove, where I'm joined by Stephen Packard. In addition to being an accomplished conservationist, author, and ecological restoration practitioner, Stephen's a volunteer land steward here, responsible for coordinating the restoration of Somme Prairie Grove. Recently, the Forest Preserve District of Cook County voted to approve the recognition of Somme Prairie Grove as the 27th dedicated Illinois nature preserve. This designation is the highest level of protection for land in the state of Illinois, granted only to natural areas of exceptional ecological quality. Stephen, thanks so much for being here and taking some time to talk to the people in the 14th District about what you're doing.
Really happy to be here and really happy to have the commissioner here. We don't always get a commissioner out in the woods.
Well, you know, I got to get out more. So can you tell me a little bit more about what got you interested in conservation in the first place?
Well, it started with my 4th grade teacher, huge influence on my life. But what got me interested in the forest preserves was I'd been involved. I'd misspent my youth protesting war and supporting civil rights and justice and diversity. And when the 60s wound down, I was looking around wondering, what should I be doing? And I read some 2 wonderful pieces, one by Professor Northeastern Illinois University Robert Batts, another by George Fell, the founder of the Nature Conservancy and the Illinois Nature Preserves Commission. And they both talked about how important biodiversity and these last remnants that survived were, and how they were gradually being destroyed by neglect. That people assume nature will take care of itself. In the modern world, it doesn't. And I said, that sounds bad. I'd like to see some of these places. And I drove to many forest preserves and looked at areas that were talked about in these publications, and I said, they really are wonderful, and they really are going away. Why isn't anybody doing anything about this? And then one day I said, well, that's what I've been doing. I'm a community organizer. Not that I ever get paid for it. It's good for them too. But I said, I know how to do this. Why don't I promote constituency of caring for the beautiful, wonderful prairies and woodlands and the forest preserves? And I called up the Forest Preserve General Superintendent and said, I'd like to do this. He said, well, I think we know what we're doing, so thanks very much. And I said, okay, great. I know what to do about that.
That's not the current superintendent. This is a prior one.
A wonderful
Right.
guy.
Okay.
Became a very close friend, Roland Eisenbeiss. So I started giving speeches and writing reports and circulating them and organizing tours, and I bought a camera and I took pictures and I started giving slideshows for community organizations, and they all informed the Forest Preserve District that they thought this was a good idea. And Roland Eisenbeiss said, well, you know, after all, I think it is a good idea. Why don't you go ahead and do it?
And when did this whole start for you? How many years ago?
1977. When Roland Eisenbeiss gave approval. It started in 76.
And so it has progressed to the point where we have a large number of volunteers who are essential to our 70,000 acres of forest preserve. And you were an instrumental part, as I understand it, of starting that whole process.
And staff says we couldn't do it without it. They couldn't do remotely as much as they do without people coming out. And it not only happened here, it has spread to the surrounding counties, the surrounding states. I helped start an organization called the Society for Ecological Restoration, which is now very active on every continent except Antarctica with
global warming, we may need it there.
We don't currently need it, but yeah. And so it's been wonderful to be part of something that was needed and has worked.
Absolutely. So it's an impressive legacy that we've already talked about, but can you tell us a little bit about what particular project you think kind of stands out in your mind of all the things you've been working on throughout this time?
I think about that from time to time, and I think what makes me happiest is that when I first thought about this, and I said, okay, organizing community, is that something I can do for nature? And there was a thought, what if you gave a party and nobody came? What if you claimed you were going to organize something and it didn't work? And what's been most fulfilling to me is the wonderful people, the hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands of wonderful people. And the people who do this are generous, curious, friendly. It's just, it's a wonderful bunch of people to spend my life with. So I think that's what is my favorite.
That sounds great. So we're obviously very fortunate to have a robust forest preserve system within Cook County. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is so particularly special about Somewood and the prairie grove we have here?
The Forest Preserve District, with 11% of the county, a very impressive record, has woodlands, wetlands, ponds, prairies, marshes, and until we started working on it, it did not have one of the major ecosystems of the region, the savanna. In fact, hardly anybody knew that there was such a thing as a savanna, which is something like a prairie and something like a forest, but really very different and in many ways more complex and rich than either. It's a grassland with scattered trees. And no one had ever restored one. There were no high quality black soil, rich savannas surviving. And so it's almost like back from the dead, this ecosystem which now has been judged by experts to be of high quality, that did not exist when we started.
That's great. So Stephen, can you tell us a little bit more about the Illinois Nature Preserve designation that Soane Prairie Grove just received, the work that entails and why it's so important?
What goes into it? When we started, there were about 240 plant species at Soane, and today there are 490. So we've more than doubled the number of species. Biodiversity is something that can be restored with a lot of work. And what people have done is prowled alongside railroad tracks and the backs of old cemeteries and along horse paths with enough lights. Very often everything is dead in the woods except next to a low edge. And we found the species that had once been there and seeded them back in, burned maybe half every year. Burning is critical to recovery. And so now there are all those additional plant species, including many rare and endangered species. A friend of mine, who I told I'd be talking to you, said, well, tell the commissioner that while you speak, people are out pollinating endangered orchids. There's a federal endangered orchid that had been gone from the site. We found seeds in another place. The population is now extinct there. We figured out how to restore it. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service adopted our program as the National Recovery program for this orchid, and they're now every year as many or more than any place else in the world that bloom at Soane. So the Nature Preserves Commission and the Illinois Natural History Survey try and keep track of these things. They want the very most important places protected. And since there is no other example, this is the best, since there is no other substantial black soil savanna restored. And what it means, nature preserve dedication, it's a legal status. It has to be approved by the owner, the Forest Preserve District, and the Nature Preserves Commission, and the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and in the end, a governor has to sign it, and then it's done. Nobody can come in and condemn it for a road, or the Forest Preserve staff and board are happy to say they cannot convert it to another use. Sometimes there are political changes that don't last very long, and something can be lost. No one has ever undone a nature preserve dedication. So this should be here for decades and centuries, supposing we do a good job for the planet.
Absolutely. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk to the residents of the 14th District today here at beautiful Somme Prairie Grove. I'm grateful that we had the chance to sit down and talk about a little bit about the natural resources and the options that people have for coming out and enjoying the nature preserves and everything we do within the Forest Preserve District. Thanks everybody for watching this, and we're going to go on a tour next, so we'll see you next time. Thank you.